The lunchtime rush filled the diner with the clatter of cutlery and murmurs of conversation. Angela moved through it all with practiced grace, coffee pot in one hand, notepad in the other. Her arms, crisscrossed with old burn scars, caught the light as she poured refills and smiled gently at regulars who greeted her with warmth. At a booth near the window, a group of out-of-towners whispered behind cupped hands. Their snickering rose in volume. "Damn, what happened to her?" One muttered loudly enough to turn heads. Another laughed. "Looks like she wrestled a wildfire and lost." Angela didn't flinch. She kept taking orders, her voice steady, but tension rippled through the room. Then, from a quiet corner, an older man stopped mid-bite, his eyes locked on a faded tattoo on her forearm. An eagle and a number. Angela Williams was used to being noticed, not for the reasons she wanted, but for the stories her skin silently told. The scars across her arms and along the edge of her jaw were impossible to hide, but she never tried. She didn't need to. They were hers, and they meant survival. In her early 30s, Angela had worked the morning shift at Mac's Diner for almost 5 years. She moved like someone who had long ago decided that kindness was a form of power. Regulars knew her by name, by the warmth in her smile, and the way she remembered how you liked your eggs without needing to ask twice. Angela's days began before sunrise, her natural rhythm in sync with the clink of coffee cups and the sizzle of bacon. She wore her curly hair pulled back in a tight bun, her uniform pressed and spotless. She had a calm presence, not quiet out of shyness, but out of choice. A woman who carried herself with quiet authority. Though most customers respected her, not everyone was kind. New faces sometimes stared, some whispered, but Angela never let it show. She learned long ago how to smile through pain, not to hide it, but to reclaim control. That Thursday morning felt like any other. She refilled mugs, called out orders to the kitchen, and offered encouragement to the new waitress still learning the ropes. The diner buzzed with its usual rhythm, locals reading newspapers, teens scrolling their phones, truckers nursing bottomless coffee. But beneath Angela's calm exterior, there was always the past, and the tattoo on her forearm, half faded beneath the scarring, told a story no one ever asked her to share. Until today. The bell above the door jingled, slicing through the soft hum of conversation. A group of 4 young adults entered, expensive sneakers, designer sunglasses worn indoors, and the unmistakable air of people who never worried about consequences. They laughed too loudly, shoved their way into a booth, and barely acknowledged Angela as she approached with a smile and a menu in each hand. "Welcome in. Can I get you started with some drinks?" she asked, voice even. "Sure, sweetheart," one of them drawled. "You got anything stronger than coffee?" More laughter. Angela didn't flinch. "We've got iced tea, Coke, root beer." As she took their orders, one of the young women leaned across the table and stage whispered, "Oh my God, are those burns?" A guy next to her snorted. "Looks like she lost a fight with a flamethrower. Damn Scarface." The laughter that followed was harsh, sharp enough to make an elderly woman at a nearby table look over with narrowed eyes. A father with 2 young kids subtly pushed their table napkins closer, shielding their view. Angela's jaw tightened, but she stayed standing, her voice calm as she finished scribbling the order. "I'll have that out shortly." She turned and walked away, ignoring the heat rising in her face and the silent stares of other diners. She wouldn't let them see it break her. Angela pushed through the kitchen doors, her breath shaky. She leaned against the wall for a moment, hands gripping the edge of the prep counter. The scent of frying onions and hot grease faded into the background as her mind pulled her somewhere else. Somewhere far hotter, far louder. A deafening blast. Screams. Smoke choking the air. She was back in the desert, the sand stinging her eyes, the sky lit up in orange fire. Her unit had been ambushed, a supply convoy torn apart by an IED. She had been the first to run toward the flames, not away, because that's what medics did. They ran in when others ran out. "Corpsman! We need a corpsman!" She remembered the soldier trapped in the burning Humvee, a kid barely 20, crying out for help. Angela had ignored the warnings, had pulled him free just before the second explosion. Fire had kissed her skin that day, left its mark, burned through her sleeves, through her flesh. The pain had been blinding, but the soldier had lived, and so had she. In the haze of morphine that followed, she remembered one moment clearly, lying on a stretcher, an army doctor quietly tracing the tattoo on her forearm, now partly charred. The emblem of her unit, a bold eagle perched over a caduceus, and a string of numbers, her family, her duty. Angela blinked, snapping back to the present as a line cook called out, "Order up!" She steadied herself, wiping her hands on her apron, her breath coming slower now. The scar on her arm was more than damage. It was proof of who she was, of what she'd done. And if those kids out front couldn't see it, that was their blindness, not her shame. At a corner booth, partially hidden by a newspaper and a steaming mug of black coffee, sat Mr. Dawson. A man in his late 60s, he was a quiet fixture at the diner. Never loud, never late, always tipping well. Today, he barely touched his toast. His eyes had been tracking Angela since the group of loud kids walked in. He saw how she handled them, calm, composed, enduring, and then he saw it. As Angela reached for a tray of drinks, her sleeve rolled up just enough to expose part of her forearm. The faded ink caught the light. Mr. Dawson froze. His breath hitched. That tattoo, he knew it. Every line, every symbol. It was a combat medic unit out of Kandahar. His nephew had served under that unit. He had heard stories, brave ones. He set down his fork slowly, rising from his seat like someone pulled by memory rather than choice. He moved toward the counter, motioning quietly to the manager. "Her name," he said, voice low. "What's her name?" "Angela," the manager replied, confused. Mr. Dawson nodded. "Angela. She served. I'd stake my life on it." Out front, the situation was escalating. One of the young men was now holding his phone up, camera pointed at Angela as she brought over their drinks. "Smile for TikTok Scarface. Gotta show people this horror show." More laughter. Angela paused, tray steady in her hands, lips pressed in a tight line. She didn't react, but her hands trembled just slightly, enough for the ice cubes to clink against the glasses. And then a shadow passed over the booth. Mr. Dawson stood tall and still beside them, his presence quiet but commanding. "Do you kids even know what that tattoo means?" he asked, voice gravelly. The one with the phone looked up, smirking. "What, the ugly ink on her arm?" "No, but I bet you're gonna tell us, Grandpa." Mr. Dawson didn't smile. He looked at Angela instead. "That's the insignia of the 56th Combat Medical Unit out of Kandahar," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Those people save lives under fire. A lot of good men came home because of medics like her." The kids snickered, but the laughter faltered. Mr. Dawson straightened, turned to Angela, and gave her a full, solemn salute. The diner went silent. Angela stood frozen, stunned. For a heartbeat, everything else vanished. The ridicule, the scars, the pain. Only the respect in that gesture remained. Mr. Dawson's voice, steady. "You earned those marks. Thank you for your service, ma'am." And with that, the room seemed to shift. People were watching now, but with reverence, not pity. Later, during a rare quiet moment, Mr. Dawson found Angela sitting alone at the corner table, sipping lukewarm coffee. He hesitated, but then pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. Angela looked up, surprise flickering in her eyes. She wasn't used to strangers, especially strangers who didn't look away or whisper behind her back. But there was something genuine in Mr. Dawson's gaze. "Mind if I sit?" he asked gently. She nodded, grateful but unsure. He folded his hands. "I wanted to thank you, not just for today, but for your service. I was in Vietnam. So a lot of good people go through hell. I know what it means to carry scars you can't hide." Angela took a breath, the walls she kept around herself softening. "I was a combat medic in Iraq," she began quietly. "I treated the wounded, pulled people out of burning vehicles, held hands as lives slipped away. I've saved lives and lost friends. That tattoo, it's my unit's emblem. It means everything. Her voice faltered for a moment, but she pressed on. The scars. They're from one explosion. I was shielding a soldier, got caught in the blast. Physically, I survived. But the nightmares, the shame for not doing enough, those don't heal so easy. She smiled faintly. I hide a lot, but I never hide my pride. Mr. Dawson nodded, eyes warm. That pride, it's what keeps us going. You wear your story with honor, Angela. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. Angela felt something she hadn't in a long time, the comfort of being seen, truly seen. The atmosphere in the diner had shifted. Word of Mr. Dawson's recognition spread quietly but swiftly among the customers. Conversations softened. Whispers turned to nods of respect. At a nearby table, a mother took her young daughter's hand gently. Go on, she said. Say thank you to Angela. She's a hero. The little girl hesitated, then ran over to Angela, eyes wide with admiration. Thank you for helping people, she said shyly. Angela's smile was genuine and warm. Back at the booth where the rude group sat, the mood had darkened. One of them, the girl who had called Angela Scarface, lowered her phone and deleted the video quietly, casting a guilty glance around the diner. The bravado that had filled their voices moments ago was now replaced by discomfort. Angela's coworkers moved closer, a nod from the cook, a pat on the back from the busboy, words of encouragement from the hostess. The kindness wrapped around her like a shield. For the first time that day, Angela felt the weight in her chest begin to lift. She wasn't just a waitress with scars, she was a survivor, a medic, a warrior, and now a hero in the eyes of the diner. As the lunch crowd thinned, Mr. Dawson approached Angela one last time. His hands, weathered but steady, held a simple, worn envelope and a small, tarnished medal. I want you to have these, he said softly, pressing them into her palm. Angela looked down, confusion flickering. She carefully opened the envelope and pulled out a letter. The embossed seal read, Veterans Honor Award. It's a recommendation, he explained, for recognizing your service. You've earned it more than I ever did. Her fingers trembled as she traced the medal's surface, a bronze star with faded engravings. It was heavy, real, and yet it felt like a symbol of something far greater. Tears welled up, blurring her vision. Thank you, she whispered, voice breaking. Mr. Dawson gave a small nod. You don't have to say anything. Just remember, you're not alone. Not ever. Angela clutched the medal to her chest, overwhelmed by the unexpected gift of acknowledgement, a validation she'd long denied herself. Days later, the diner buzzed with a new energy. Angela moved through her shift with a confidence that hadn't been there before. For the first time in years, she wore short sleeves, letting the scars breathe in the sunlight streaming through the windows. The tattoo on her forearm was no longer hidden. It was a quiet badge of honor. Veterans began stopping by, tipping generously, sharing quiet nods of respect. One man, a retired Marine, clasped her hand and said, "Thank you for your service. You remind me why we keep going." And then, unexpectedly, one of the young adults who had mocked her walked in. His head bowed, eyes sincere. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't know. I was wrong." Thank you. Angela studied him for a long moment, then smiled, forgiving, strong. "It's okay," she said. "We all have our stories. Sometimes it takes time to see them." The diner felt different now, warmer, fuller, stronger. Angela stood tall, not because the scars had disappeared, but because she'd embraced every part of herself. She was a survivor, a medic, a hero, and finally at peace. You never know someone's story by their scars. Heroes walk among us every day, not for medals, but because they care. If you see someone being mistreated, stand up. If you carry scars, visible or not, know this. They are signs not only of pain but also of power. Share this story, speak up for kindness, and let's treat everyone with the dignity they deserve. Together we can build a world where respect is earned not by perfection, but by the courage to keep going.